I was taken there by a girlfriend as a tourist about 1966. She took me in and I wandered in onto the stage, and it just struck me, this is the most famous place in Hollywood, isn't it? And I just thought, we'll never play here. And 50 years later, I had my own show there.
He's a maverick guitar player who doesn't like to repeat himself, who takes big risks all the time, has done so all the way through his career.
The guitar player who builds hot rods, I mean, the two go very well together. There's been a lot of wake-up calls for me watching Jeff and listening to Jeff play and working with Jeff. It's always intriguing, you know, and he's a great musician. He has so much to offer that, you know, he's been able to carve his own path.
Music draws people together, and somebody lights a touch paper and it goes bang, and that's it.
It makes you feel like important, like what you have to offer is a beautiful thing.
Most guitar players just play guitar, and then Jeff can make it sing.
Jeff has got effects up the yin-yang when he's recorded, but live, he brings it to a different level.
Part of Jeff's mystique is that he likes being mysterious.
He's a bit of an unsung hero to the masses. Part of that is due to many albums not having vocals.
I told him that he was the Pablo Picasso of electric guitar. And he said back to me, he goes, I would think I was more the Jackson Pollock. And I was like, touche.
It's so instinctive and it's so exciting to be around because you just don't know what's going to happen next.
This is not paint by numbers. This is the muse, and the muse is going to say what it's going to say, and he lets it happen, and next.
He's such a forward thinker and an innovator. He's just always reaching for new things.
Jeff is an incredible artist, and I always have an affinity for male artists who can find fantastic female artists to accompany them.
Jeff is the guy who took the instrument of guitar to the furthest reaches of guitar universe, and nobody even come close.
Everybody respects Jeff. He's an extraordinary musician, and he's developed a technique which is so complex. It's just a beauty to behold and to hear and to feel his playing. He's having a conversation with you and he's playing. It's just he's not singing.
He gets sounds that no other guitar player gets. He bends notes like no other guitar player. You know, he was, and is still, the most original guitar player ever.
My mum played the piano, so being close proximity to her, music was always around. She was either playing the piano or sticking me in the living room with the radio, so there'd be whatever was on at the time. She had very strict ideas and hopes of what she wanted me to be. I would love to play the piano, but it's already done. And after I heard Art Tatum, there was a good enough reason never to ever sit in front of a piano again. I just thought there's no place for another pianist. I don't feel that was my destiny. Whereas guitar, I didn't have to think about it. I wouldn't have cared if it had been the worst waste of my life. I'd still want to be alone with it and just pour my feelings into it. It responds so readily to touch. The radio was never off. I think my mum put it there just to shut me up.
Somewhere there's music, fade the tune. Somewhere there's heaven, how high the moon. There is no moon above, love is far away too, till it comes true.
And the Les Paul influence was because some program or other had How High the Moon, and every time it came on for the radio, I would run to the kitchen and say, Mum, what's this? She'd say, oh, I've read about that guy, he's just a box of tricks. As a phony, I went, this is interesting. Electric guitar, phony, you know, to a kid, it's intriguing. She said, well, it was revealed that he can't play that fast, it's all sped up. And I said, well, I like the sound he's making. It doesn't matter if it's sped up. I was interested in the guitar solos on the records my sister was playing. Hound Dog, for example, I mean, you know, and Rock Around the Clock. This was heaven. And I started to analyse sound in great detail. You know, Eddie Crocken had a slap echo. Cliff Gallup had a slap echo. It was just too good. Those records still sound astonishingly good.
Once I got to know Jeff and talked to him about his influences, he liked that guy that was with Gene Vincent a lot, you know, Cliff Gallup.
My sister went to the Sutton Granada and saw this film, and she said, you have to see it. It's just the most amazing Technicolor film of everything you like, everything we like. And I went with some friends to see Vincent and the Blue Caps in color. It was life-changing. That is the best rock and roll film ever made. Everything that I loved seemed to be coming from America. The cars, the music, I couldn't see any way of ever getting there. I'm talking about no money at all. My sister that came in one day from school and threw this piece of paper with a phone number on it. Here's the number of a geek at school who's got a weird-looking guitar like yours. And she agreed to take this bus ride over to Epsom, where we knocked on the door, and this fresh-faced little kid answered the door, and he invited us in.
Well, they came round to my house. I was living at home, of course, with my parents, and Jeff came in, and he had a homemade guitar, and I also had a homemade guitar there as well, and we just sort of clicked immediately.
It was like two brothers, you know, almost. You know, it was just a joyous thing to find somebody else who had this common interest.
He'd come round and we'd sort of hang out and I'd play records to him.
He had equipment. He had a tape recorder and all the goodies, and a great record collection, mouth-watering collection.
I had such an eclectic mix of records even as a teenager. It was a great adventure, finding other people who might know a different chord to you, or finding a record shop where they were importing, say, VJ records, as opposed to the Chicago movement of the 50s, the blues movement, as opposed to all the chess catalogue. And there was lots of pilgrimages involved, and all of those guitarists from that point, we all learnt from records.
So we used to sit there listening and go back over the solo, never mind the song, never mind the singer. What the hell is that going on, you know? How is this sounding like a ricochet effect? And why does it sound so exciting?
You wanted to see if you could play what was on it. It's quite an accomplishment to hear something that's really, really, really amazing to you and really moved you, but then really actually work towards being able to play it.
You've got a partner in crime. You've got somebody to hammer out ideas. When you've learnt something that sounds reasonably impressive, you want somebody to see what they think of it.
We were really, really keen on exactly the same things with the Gene Vincent records and Ricky Nelson records. There were always fine guitar solos by James Burton, and one of the things that we would ask of each other was, what's your version of My Babe? Okay, yeah, what's your version? That seemed to be a sort of a communal ground between most guitarists around that time to see how well other guys could cut this solo.
I used to love going over there, to have something that was so close to my heart, you know, and to my ears as well. It hit all the jackpots.
It seemed like everybody was coming out of art school in the 50s when rock and roll first started to reach out from America to here.
It was a great way of escaping any form of work, I think, you know, any form of day job. I did love it. I mean, I did love the fact that there was a place you could go and draw and learn, you know, the basics of art. I had 2 years of great fun there. But the music took over because midweek there was a gig in a town not far from where I lived. And that kept me going, just that one gig. And then 2 gigs a week came in and so on. And unfortunately, I had to bail before the end of the course.
Music was our hobby. And then we ended up being professionals.
When the Yardbirds came about, then Eric was the force to be reckoned with. They had Eric, so why did they want me? I don't understand that.
They were looking for hit records, and we weren't making any music of that nature. His name was used as a replacement. They were telling me in a way that I wasn't that vital to the organisation. So I went to see him. He was with the Tridents because I wanted to see, was he really as good as they made out? And he had all these sound effects going on. And I thought, my God, I'm gone. I'm long gone. I actually thought about retiring then because I thought I'm in the wrong business, you know. But seeing Jeff, I thought, well, they're onto a good thing.
The Yardbirds a lot. I like that Heart of the Soul and the sitar-like playing of Jeff's. He's such a distinctive player. He didn't follow anyone else really, just completely out there on his own.
They had a sitar player in the studio, and he was thinking in sort of 13 1/4 time signature. And they said, no, it's 4/4, down, 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 down. And I said, it's sort of like this. And I got the octave, the G octave, and then played. And I said, why the hell we got him here? I can play that.
I think he was a hard rock pioneer from day one. He was doing stuff that didn't exist except for him.
When I first heard the Yardbirds, when I heard Jeff's playing, it was noticeably different, even then to my young years. There was a sound to his guitar that kind of stood out and was different from the usual pop stuff. There was something about it, the notes he was playing, I mean, that was more lyrical to me.
And within a month, we were flying over to America. Not only had been to America, but I'd recorded at the famous Sun Studios and Chess Records.
Shapes of things before my eyes just teach me to despise. Will time make man more wise?
Shapes of Things, amazing. I remember that distinctly. How is it we've had to come this far to get the sound we want? And England, the studios didn't get it. The engineers back in England were more pure. They didn't like anything that rattled or squeaked. I mean, bring on the squeaks. We don't care about that. Instantly, we heard the playback, we were all looking at each other going, this is the stuff, you know.
Jeff would come round and he'd play me the sort of first cuts of the records. And I remember him playing Shapes of Things. And when it came to the solo, I thought, this is the most extraordinary solo.
Ravi Shankar was playing quite a big part in the Beatles and stuff. And I used to sit over at Page's house listening to ragas, you know, and Vilayat Khan and Ravi Shankar, and just marvelling, how could this be adopted in the guitar, this bending of the string, to such an extent that you could play a melody with one bend.
Work that Jeff did in the Yardbirds was paramount importance to guitar-based groups because he had an incredible ear and he set an amazing standard, and also that his technique was extraordinary as well. And I must say, when I heard that, I really understood what Jeff was really capable of.
Yardbirds had a crazy manager, and I remember Giorgio freaking. His steam was coming out of his ears. When I played that solo, this is exactly why you're in this band. You are opening up surreal avenues, you know, like avant-garde avenues that are for the guitar in this band. Giorgio was great, but I think there was some skullduggery going on with the money. I don't know. All I know is that I never made any of it. I think I must have threatened to leave unless they got rid of him. Then Simon Napier Bell appeared and agreed to take over. Within 5 minutes, Jimmy Page is in the band, and we were on the set of Blow Up, and nobody knew what it was going to be like. As most movies, they don't really tell you. But I was just told that Antonioni was a great director and surreal, and it just seemed like a cool thing. And the check for $3,000 was amazing, and you know, I don't think any of the band had ever seen that kind of money in one lump. They all went out and invested sensibly in fruit and veg, shops, it's a business. And I invested in a 63 split-window Corvette, which was the only sensible thing for a person like me to deal with. I had a girlfriend in LA, and it was a comfortable place. This weather was amazing. And I left all that to go on this tour. It was the Yardbirds.
I'd never played in America before. It was a shock. It was really surreal from everything that I thought that it was going to be.
The Dick Clark Caravan of Stars was a conglomeration of acts. We would all get on stage and do 2 or 3 songs. They would tour in buses. You know, you had to be a real trooper. I mean, they would go out on the road and do 60 dates in 60 days.
And that was very, very odd, because it was a collection of teeny bop stars, teeny boppers, and for a very young audience.
In a bus that stank, and it was crammed with people that didn't really like us. We didn't get on with the rest of the cast.
There was like a toilet that got busted, and that didn't work, and people had to sleep in the luggage racks. But Jeff missed all that, because he left pretty early after just a few dates.
After 2 gigs, I thought I've just nearly killed myself to do 15 minutes on stage of the 2 hits plus 1 other song. That's it. It was a quick turnaround. Jerry Lewis's son was on the tour, Gary Lewis and the Playboys, and I thought, this is so middle America. We're telling people that we're part of this, and we're not. The Yardbirds were completely on the road to forging a unique career, you know, and they threw it into this ridiculous mixing box. And I said, Jim, I called him to my room. I said, Jim, I've just had the horrors. Here's my guitar, you take lead tomorrow. I'm not even going to take the guitar. That was the end of me. No girlfriend, no Yardbirds, no nothing. But I had my Corvette parked in my mother's sideway, so I was free to dream again.
Jeff and I met up at the Sheffield Mojo when I was doing the circuit up and down the motorway in my first group, the Birds. We got on really well, and he was telling me about this gig with the Yardbirds and kind of spoke that, well, if we ever are not in the setup we're in now, one day we'll work together.
One of the good things about the Yardbirds times was that we'd come back from a tour of maybe up north, and even if 2 o'clock in the morning, we'd stop off at the Cromwellian Club. After the Yardbirds, I thought, there's nothing to stop me from going back there on my own. And the guy on the door went, Jeff, nice to see you back. That night, there was not much going on. There were Motown records playing, and I'm thinking, this is sad. I'm sitting alone with a beer. There was one other guy in the corner, and it was Rod Stewart.
We talked a little bit, and he said he was forming a band. He'd left the Yardbirds. I was out of work, and I think I may have mentioned Woody and said he's out of work as well. So it was like 3 out-of-work musicians, and we formed a band.
His collaboration with Rod Stewart was kind of legendary. One of the best things that Rod ever did, as well as Jeff on that Truth album.
It was the huskiness that was rare, you know, to have in a white singer. I loved it.
Over here. Let me love you, baby. You're driving my poor heart crazy. Let me love you, baby. You're driving my poor heart crazy.
The band with Mickey Waller, myself on bass, and Jeff on the guitar, the holes and the spaces that it left for Rod's voice in its rawness. Jeff used to really treasure Rod's voice, you know, and treasure all the things that could happen in those spaces.
Oh, yes, you do, darling. Every time I see you. Oh, baby, when you walk, you know what? You shake just like a pillow. I know.
He believed in me, he really did. He wanted a proper singer in his band.
He had a voice that was so the vital instrument within the band that you didn't need a rhythm guitar.
Jeff's virtuoso performances tied up with Rod's blues-type vocals on that album that was absolutely a seminal album.
Truth has like Rock by Plimsoll on it. It's got, I think it's Superstitious. It's really my favorite Jeff Beck stylistically. You know, it's more sort of in-your-face rock and roll.
Jeff didn't just want to play what Muddy Waters had played and Howling Wolf. He wanted to take it more Chicago-ish and more electric and just take it out of that basic idiom that it's in, you know, and electrify it, make it more arrangements. Even though the songs are 12-bar blues, we arranged the songs to sound more interesting.
Right, let's go. Hold on, can you just play us the I don't want to sing it in unison, I can sing it in harmony, can't I, mate? Well, sing it however you want. But stop me, I'll try something on this first few chords. If it sounds sus, stop me, right? Make your voice nearly in the background.
Mickey Most, he didn't want to know about Rod at all. He said, "You're the artist. Your name is on the label." I said, "No, but I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in being part of a great rock band or a blues band."
Mickey just believed in the old dollar, make it as quick as you can, and really wanted us to be a pop band. You know, much to our dismay, because that's not what we want to do. He didn't see any point in having me, really. He wanted Jeff to sing.
You're everywhere and nowhere, baby. That's where you're at. Going down a bumpy hillside in your hippie hat.
Why was he such a reluctant pop star? I guess that just wasn't really what he ever wanted to do. Don't know how that song came about. Some sort of pressure, if you like, from Mickey Most to try and come up with a hit. But I think he very, very quickly realised that that wasn't ever going to be what he wanted to do. Absolutely his prerogative. But it's given lots of other people an enormous amount of pleasure. Much more pleasure than it ever gave him.
It's like being asked to wear a pink frock and walk on top of a bus down Oxford Street. It was framing me with this embarrassing pop song that wasn't me, but over the years I've become warm to it because it makes people feel happy.
Jeff, I believe, asked Mickey if I could sing Hi-Ho Silver Lining, but Mickey said no. So but you can hear me yodeling in the background on the chorus.
Just when you think you're getting there, you realise you're about 6 months away. I kicked off in Mickey Most's office, and on this particular argument, Peter Grant was there, and he was smiling at me. I was going, it was as though the smile was saying, give him some stick, you know. He needs to be put in his place, meaning Mickey. Shortly after that, he must have had a word with Mickey and said, look, Jeff was in the Yardbirds. He already opened the door in America for himself to go back with a band. There's an underground scene over there. Steppenwolf was happening. FM radio was happening.
There were venues, and there was press, and there were radio stations, and, you know, you could build an act by coming and touring.
So this was mind-boggling. Well, I remember when Woody and I drove across the Brooklyn Bridge in the back of a limo with Peter Grant, the manager. I mean, it was just heaven. Here we are. But it was a 5-month tour. It was hard work, but it was great fun.
When we went to America, we opened at Fillmore East.
Talk about jumping the deep end. And that's the famous night when Rod wouldn't come on stage, he hid.
That was the night I hid behind the amps. Absolutely true story, because I thought, I'm in America, New York, and I'm trying to sound like a black singer, and there's going to be loads of black people out there, and they'll throw things at me. Phony, fake. But lo and behold, I came out, and there was all loads of hippies, you know. And it was the start of a wonderful, wonderful career.
We stormed the place. We blew the dead off the stage.
Robert Sheldon from the New York Times gave us a write-up.
Peter Grant rang me at 7 in the morning and said, have you read the review? I went, oh, I don't want to hear it. He said, no, it's amazing. He read it to me about the Pinter play, the interaction of... And I sort of read it, and I thought, right, what do we do now?
We had it reproduced, and sent ahead. We had it sent to all the places on the way to the West Coast. So by the time we got to the Fillmore West, we'd already broken the ground, broken into the American scene, which was fantastic.
We all decided to try and write songs, and Ronnie and I sat around his mum's council flat for hours and hours with a blank piece of paper until we got a bottle of wine out and we finished that. You know, then we were able to write a song called Plinth.
I've woken up on mornings such as this and thought exactly the same as I'm thinking now. Every night for a year I've slept alone. My cold, damp room looks worse than me. I got a fear of death that creeps on every night. I know I won't die soon, but then again I might. Just like water down the drain, I'm wasting away. And all doctors can't help the ghost of a man, that's me.
Plinth I'm very proud of because that was one of my compositions where I wrote the words. Moisture from the ocean fills the sky, falls back down to the ground as time goes by. I was very proud of my bass sound and the whole thing with the drums and the guitar and Rod's soulful singing, you know, and Nicky's piano playing. It was a magic combination.
It was an honour to be in the band, to be quite honest with you, along with, you know, Mickey Waller and Nicky Hopkins and Ronnie Wood. It was a great band.
If you think about how long ago that was and what an impact they must have had at the time. You know, he's so unique and original. Truth and Beck really stood out, sort of benchmark rock and roll records. Definitely big statements for the time.
The sounds of those records are definitely, I still use them as touchstones for you know, even what I do today, because nothing sounds like those records. And I was lucky enough to see them live 2 or 3 times, and it was really exciting. And you never knew if he was going to show up or not. I mean, some of the stories about quitting in the middle of a tour, I mean, that's like, you know, that's pretty heavy, you know, but that's Jeff.
There was a rift between me and Rod at that time. I don't know how it came about.
It casts a bit of doubt, you know, like, I didn't want to bank too much on the next tour in case it didn't happen.
I saw this big festival looming up on the calendar, and I was nervous about it. I thought we're not ready for that, you know. We're not ready to go up against Sly and the Family Stone.
The Woodstock Festival was 2 weeks away when the Beck group kind of collapsed, and I thought it's a shame because there's a big gig coming up in a couple of weeks. Woodstock.
He disappeared in the middle of the night. Next morning, he was gone. And we got a phone call, Jeff's gone home.
And when I saw the film, I just thought, thank God for my integrity. Thank God that the little birdie whispered, don't do it. Because I would have been up there, dated and frozen with that image, you know, with the music not being quite right. I did the right thing.
He could have explained it to us and that would have made sense. But I do agree, I'm glad we didn't do it.
Once again, I'm, you know, back to my mum's house again.
He's not particularly wrapped up in his success. Just as soon not discuss music and the guitar, rather talk about the movies that he likes and, you know, certainly his cars.
My gran used to take me to the cinema, and she took me to see a posh film, but the supporting film was Hot Rod Gang. She just freaked out and said, oh, this is not suitable, because the word gang was in it. And she said, right, we're leaving. Let's go out of the cinema and come back when the main feature starts. I clung onto the seat. The opening sequence shows these 2 hot rods racing one another on opposite sides of the street. Totally cool. And I was smitten right away. For a B movie, I mean, it was pretty nonsensical. I still watch it from time to time, as it was such a massive impact.
Come on, Johnny, let's go. Hot rods has always been his passion from when he was really, really young. And then he started building them. The way that he puts it most of the time, you know, music and guitar is his job, and that's his, you know, that's his pastime. When he gets back home off tour,
He's always kind of tinkered with his cars as long as I've known him, you know. I think the first time that I went to his house, the hood of his Corvette was open and he might have been under the hood.
The fact that Jeff builds those cars and the fact that he does it so well, it's obviously, he's kind of a man of two passions, I think, guitar and cars.
Your senses are sharpened because you built it. And even if you had a professionally built car, you're still driving an early car, you know, maybe Ford or a Chevy 30s, and they don't handle the same as a late model car. And I'm going over this hill, no top of the car, you know, just 30 miles an hour over this little gentle incline, get to the top of it, and the car starts to go straight onto the oncoming traffic without me touching the wheel. And I turned the wheel on the opposite lock and it still kept going, and it hit this poor chap in this Morris Traveller head on. Broke his legs, broke my face up, and back injury, leg injury. I got taken into Maidstone General, who were amazing. I mean, just incredible. We had a cheerful chappie that used to come around and shave you, you know, and bring you tea. I was recovering, and then this guy decided to bring me a music paper, and he was a Scouser. He went, "Your mate's gone joined the Faces." I went, "Oh, terrific." You didn't need to hear that right at that particular time.
I think the biggest problem for Jeff is finding somebody to front the band that really fit what he was doing, you know.
He had arguably one of the best singers at the time in his band, and how long did that band last? A couple of years?
Rod Stewart was great, but you know, more often than not, and I think one of the reasons why he ended up being an instrumentalist is just it was hard to find anybody that really interpreted the music correctly or just had the right energy or whatever it was, you know.
I got to Epic in mid-'72, and the Orange album had come out a few months before that. The name of the album is Jeff Beck Group, but we all always referred to it as the Orange album because there was a photo of the orange on the cover.
I started looking around for players that could really, like drummers, that I was always focused on drummers. They are the life of the band. They are the driving force. You get your drummer right, you're pretty much set for life.
We obviously lost a lot of regular contact, but when I did see Jeff, he'd always be keen on his latest lineup. Always rave about different drummers, you know. He said, "Oh, I've got this guy called Cozy Powell, you know, like, yeah, listen to what I'm doing."
I loved Cozy. I picked him out of a lineup of 20-odd drummers. Mickey Mo's secretary organised this whole audition. And she said, "Jeff, I know you're late." He said, but she said, "You don't need to look at anybody else. There's your brother over there." Looking like the same hair, you know. You're like, "Hey, Jeff, I'm Cozy." I mean, right. And he started playing. And you saw people putting their cymbals back in the cases. They were packing their drums ready. They knew that was it. And then Max Middleton came up with the idea of a simple melody, a bluesy thing, with a bottleneck. And he said, "Why don't we write 3 melodies?" And there are 3 melodies in there. One plays the counter melody, and then there's a third descant on top of that. And I remember thinking, this is a cacophony of noise. Steve Croppo came there and he said, "Man, this is really amazing." Because I was doing these parts individually and dubbing on. And I wasn't hearing the blend. I was only doing them individually. Because if I'd heard guitar number 1, I would not have been able to play against it. And when I went up and heard all 3 put together, you know, it was, let's buy Max a round of drinks for that one.
I think there's no question that Definitely Maybe led the way to Blow by Blow. With a detour, with Jeff, there's always a detour.
Looking for another pure love in my life.
Well, I've always liked playing on other people's records and not not being named. I mean, that thing where Stevie calls out Jeff on Looking for Another Pure Love.
Do it, Jeff.
And it is actually great when it happens, but I think I like Jeff, like playing on records where we're just kind of the mystery agent, and I like the idea of someone being able to identify me by what I'm playing.
Stevie's record company needed him to do something, and I wasn't doing anything. And Epic said, what if we got you in the studio with Stevie? We couldn't wait for this to happen. So the deal was I was to play a couple of tracks on Stevie's album, Talking Book, and then he'd write me a couple of tracks, one of which was Superstition. He said, what about we write a song, we get a song with superstitions that you know about, that the Americans maybe not know about. And I said, well, we don't walk under ladders for bad luck. And I said, if you dropped a mirror, that would be 7 years better. I started playing the drums in a break. He'd gone out for lunch and he'd come back and he was clapping along to my rhythm. I said, Steve, it's not, I'm not a drummer. He goes, yeah, you are now. Don't stop. And he just grabbed the clavinet and started playing that vamp. And I'm thinking, Christ, I'm playing drums to Stevie Wonder. It was pretty cool, just a simple thing that I could play. And then he went, okay, I'll lay the track down, because I was messing up with fills and stuff. And he came and sat at the same kit and played exactly what I was playing, but better. And he made space for a 5-chord or a turnaround all right away. And then he went straight in and put bass line on. That was it. When that bass line came on, the whole studio turned upside down. Then he went and put the lyrics on, rough lyrics, and that was how that song was made. Then, when the demo went back to Motown, Berry Gordy heard it. He said, this is the best thing you've ever written. So out comes Stevie's single, and it's a smash, #1, and it still is like the biggest seller, I think, of all time of his singles. And it worked out okay because it was a much better version than the one we did, I think. We did a heavy metal version. I don't think he cared for it too much.
When I heard Stevie Wonder's version of that song, that's the definitive version of that song, nobody should ever cover it, just leave it alone, otherwise it'll just sound like a bar band butchering it. Not so with Jeff Beck, not so. And when Beck, Bogert, and Apsey, recorded it, it stood on its own like another entity again.
And they were great. I mean, they were just incredibly exciting to play with. I'd seen the Fudge 3-4 times, they blew me away.
It's pretty powerful.
Unknowingly, maybe Stevie had written the ultimate power trio song because the double bass drums that Carmen used were perfect. Timmy's busy bass playing, with that riff. What more could be? They sang as well, so we got 2 singers, bass player and a drummer. Good morning, it's over.
I mean, there's a certain amount of fuck you-ness to everything Jeff does. And I think there's a big dose of that in that song.
But unfortunately, we couldn't match any song to that level, that quality. So there was never really a proper album. We toured and we were knocking people out of the park, it was great. We played Crystal Palace and there were girls swimming across this pond to get to the front of the stage. It was great. And I thought, well, this is on our way. And we were getting ridiculously good response. And then along comes the mental writer's blocks. We weren't writing very good songs.
They were making a second album, and it just kind of petered out. The managers had to get together and effect a divorce. Record company didn't have a whole lot to do with it. We were observers, spectators.
It just exploded, Sadly, it did.
He's not as wrapped up in being a rock star, being that whole thing. He can be true to his art and still take, and then he leaves it there, and then he goes home, works on his cars, lives out in the country, and I think he's found a really good balance between the two.
I was working on the wrecked rod of the '69 accident, and I had a transistor radio playing. I was lying on the ground doing something to this back axle or whatever. Rainwater was streaming past me, and I thought, I'm in the gutter. I've ended up back in the gutter. And it almost washed the radio away. And it was McLaughlin playing on Jack Johnson, that amazing album. Miles, please. It's a wonderful thing. And then you hear McLaughlin going in there. And it was a moment where I just went in, stopped work, went in there and made a cup of tea, continued listening. And that was it. I just thought, there's a door open now. This is what I want to do. It's more focused on guitar only and it negates the necessity for a vocalist. There's no point in going around the world trying to find another Rod Stewart.
What a great lineup of musicians. The brilliant Max Middleton playing keyboards.
Richard Bailey and Phil Chen on drums and bass.
And produced by George Martin at Air Studios.
I gave the album the title Blow by Blow because the word blow means many things. But I always use it in the sense of a jazz thing. When you do an extempore bit, you are giving it a blow.
To look at the joy on George's face when he discovered that we were going to have fun.
Jeff and I met up, and he invited me to the studio, and he was telling me how George was really just letting him play and stretch, and he was recording all the things and then making the finished version, He was somebody who would really understand the precision of Jeff's playing and just how different and how separate it was from anybody else's. George Martin really understood that Jeff was a serious musician.
He wasn't a producer with a singular vision of how he thought it would be that he would want to impose. And I don't suppose anyone would have much luck imposing their vision on Jeff.
Well, Jeff could be temperamental, but never a big problem. If he felt frustrated because he wouldn't be getting what he wanted, sometimes he would get very upset, and in fact he did fling his guitar right across the studio at one point. But people are temperamental, that's right, they can blow off steam. As long as they don't throw it at me, I'm all right. We didn't have any problems. We got on very well.
He loves exploring the guitar, and when he does hear something that catches his ear or gives him a new idea, he gets deeply into it.
John McLaughlin was kicking my butt, at the time. The Mahavishnu Orchestra, that played a big part.
Jeff's always said the Mahavishnu Orchestra is like his one. He still holds it as like holy grail. This is what inspired me to start pushing things to the next level.
One tune that has some of that Mahavishnu feel is Scatterbrain.
It started as a schizophrenic run that I did when I was nervous in the dressing room. 2 seconds before going on, I'd be and Max, being the calculated SOB that he is, he said, "You know that annoying scale you play? I've written some chords underneath it." He said, if you move it up a semitone, I can make a track out of it. And before we knew it, we had this song.
Yeah, that's a really, it's a chop buster, that song.
He really was getting away from the straight rock stuff that he was doing, and he wanted to open it up to a more melodic and a little softer and jazzier angle.
George loved it, and he started putting the string arrangements to it. Just bare bones creativity on the spot.
When I suggested to him that we use an orchestra with it, he was a little bit taken aback, I think. And for me, it was a fairly risky thing because Jeff had never done this before. And I wondered whether the audience would accept the fact that Jeff Beck was working with a string sound.
George was open to anything and the most encouraging and most kindest person. And boy, did he get a great sound.
'Cause We've Ended as Lovers is the standout track of all time for me. I just think that is Jeff at his most beautiful, lyrical. It's a Stevie Wonder song, of course, which must be pointed out.
When I heard that album, I just thought, oh, wow. Her voice was like a crystal stream flowing. And I started playing 'Cause We Ended as Lovers, playing the melody that Sarita sang. Max Middleton said, "That's beautiful, what is it?" And I played him the Sarita version. He went, "Why don't we do that as an instrumental?"
Jeff's an amazing person because he can get the most incredible sounds out of an electric guitar. Even after he's flung it across the studio, he will still pick it up, wiggle it a bit, and make great sounds. And he uses the guitar as his voice. He sings with his guitar. And I don't know any other guitar player like it.
Blow by Blow was an instantaneous success upon release. It really took off like a rocket. It shot up the charts. Turns out that lots of Jeff Beck fans out there were just waiting for an album in which they could hear him play maximum guitar.
Max and George, the two of them just were like two peas in a pod. Because of their musicianship, the keyboard, Max would come up with these twisted chords, enter Pork Pie Hat, with the Charlie Mingus stuff.
Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, written by Charles Mingus as an ode, really, to the great sax player Lester Young, really stands out as being something very special and different, something unexpected from Jeff.
And after we finished, there was dead silence. I went, oh. And George went, you could hear the button go. He said, "Jeff, that was very tasteful."
day, I tell people, boy, if you want to learn guitar, there's all the scales and arpeggios and all this stuff, but you need to learn 2 solos, and they're both relatively easy to learn because they're slow. Goodbye Pork Pie Hat on Wired and Cause We Ended as Lovers, because that's where the feel is.
I got a letter from Charlie Mingus, and it said, "Dear Jeff, I was so knocked out with your version of Pork Pie Hat." And that's when we had the world at our feet. You know, we could do anything we wanted.
Jeff is like a rock and roll musician who understands jazz. So that's a very rare animal.
We went to see Mahavishnu Orchestra in Zurich.
We were playing in the same week, so we ended up being at a party in the same hotel.
We had the greatest time. You know, I got to know the Mahavishnu Orchestra, McLaughlin, Jan Hammer, Billy Cobham, Jerry Goodman. It was just amazing.
And I ended up, you know, really getting, you know, great contact and talking because we really had very much in common.
And Jan knew me, you know. I said, you said, "Of course I know you, the Yardbirds, I know all this stuff." So this is the great bonding session that took place.
This was before Wired. He was pretty much finished. I think he had some rough mixes.
The album was virtually done but not finished. George Martin had to leave. He was committed to do an album by America. George left, and without the finishing touches being applied to the album. There were still some overdubs, certainly some mixing.
So I had to say goodbye to George. Jan was interested in that I would fly over there and watch this magician do his stuff on this record.
And I just did quick mixes of this, and basically all those mixes ended up being the masters for the album. So more than half of the album was mixed here. And then also we did one tune from scratch, which was called Blue Wind.
And he said, "Play this riff." The two notes, the down, down, and I said, "Oh, come on, Jan. This is kiddie stuff, you know." He went, "Trust me." And I didn't like it at all.
It was a very simple riff and a combination of things. And it by the time I did the drums to it and my keyboard synthesizers.
And he got these oratones and stuck them on his mantelpiece and cranked it, and the speakers were shaking. I went, "Okay, I get it now." It gave a great platform for solos, and it was all about embellishing and showing off and taking flight with your solos.
It just turned out to be a great tune that sort of has been living on decades now.
It was incredible to play with Jan Hammer, with Jeff Beck at the Hollywood Bowl. Jeff had always talked about Jan before. Jeff loves Jan. Obviously, they have a great, and vice versa, they have a great relationship.
I'm sitting there and I'm looking at both of them and, watching them interact. And you can see, the years of friendship and mutual respect and adoration that they have for one another.
Star Cycle was interesting because, again, what I did was I recorded the whole track here in the old studio with, again, with the sequencer, and I played drums. And then I took the tape to Ramport the Who studio in London, and we edit all the all the lead parts on top of it.
That song has a very particular melody, and again, the whole thing is about the trade-off between Jan and Jeff. How their minds work together is incredible. They can really bounce off of each other, and it's like fireworks.
He's just inspired, by whatever the dynamic is that's on the stage. That's what he's looking for. He's looking for inspiration, a reason to strike, that string and pull, make that next sound.
That's the reason I always love playing with him, because it's gonna be so fresh. And he's gonna pull something out of his sleeve that you say, how did you do that? You think that guitar is so limited, and people sometimes even demonstrate how limited guitar is by playing, basically a couple of riffs, and that's the whole career. Jeff is opened it up to so many areas that it's really hard to keep up.
I came back to Epic in 1980 after the There and Back album, during which time I failed to convince Jeff to do even one album for Epic.
Years had gone by, and I didn't want to go along with that. The 80s, push-button music and all that.
I certainly visited Jeff at his home. He was the most gracious host, showed me his cars in the garage, which he, was spending a significant amount of his time working on, very happily.
There was no place for me, so I just buried myself in my workshop. And it got to the point where I think they forgot I was even on Epic label. And, ended up driving to different sessions.
Any artist would be thrilled to have Jeff contribute to their work. So the fact that over the years he's guested on albums from such a diverse array of acts, from Stevie Wonder to Stanley Clarke to Diana Ross to Mick Jagger to Tina Turner, on and on and on.
And I loved guesting with him. I loved every minute of that,
He's kind of guided his career the way he wanted. And there's something to be said for taking time off and regrouping rather than having a record company breathing down your neck for a new record every year.
Epic Records thought it would be a great idea to get an artist to drop me a broad hint by painting this surreal garage with a guitar up on the ramp instead of a car. I loved it. I loved that cover. It was me. I mean, that was it. They couldn't have... They hit it bullseye. That was me.
Without a doubt, Guitar Shop, I think, was a real return to form.
And that was their jolt. I put my back into the album with Tony Hymas and Terry Bozzio. The results were really groundbreaking in a way for a three-piece to put out so much power. It was a power trio with keyboards instead of bass.
His approach is super, super rhythmic. So in order for that to work, you have to have a backline that gets it.
I think Terry Bozzio had a lot to do with that.
He's worked with amazingly great drummers, So, I mean, I've stood in some tall company. When you hear the song, it lives up to its name of Big Block, which obviously refers to a large size engine in an automobile.
His playing is amazing. That Big Block riff is fucking awesome.
The heavy kind of sexy riff in the middle, that was all my stuff.
Big Block is great. What a classic. What a classic. Powerhouse tune. That's a pure example, I think, of a lot of power and energy that's in Jeff's show.
It's full of aggression and spirit. It's got a nasty, nasty overtone to it.
There's this underlying, reoccurring riff that's happening the whole time. The main riff on the bass that's low enough to give space for the guitar to do absolutely anything. So he just goes mental. The sounds he gets out of that instrument still shocks me.
So definite, and he so definitely sounds like he knows where he's going and exactly what he wants to do, and he's going to execute it perfectly. It's always got melody, but it's also got great attack and sort of aggressive fire to it. Brilliant.
Jeff not using a pick, I learned a lot from that. So I actually alternate between using a pick and not using a pick because you're just that much more connected, and there's an emotional thing that happens when you do it that way that sings and soars above and beyond using a guitar pick.
The early days in the Yardbirds, he was still playing with a pick, but then he developed playing without a pick. And then he sort of concentrated more on Stratocaster. And he had the guitar so fine-tuned to every nuance and the tonality of it, the tension of it, that he developed a style that was totally unique. And that's pretty magical.
Where Were You basically is impossible. It's just an impossible tune. It's that song where he plays the melody with harmonics. He's got such a sensitive ear to know exactly when things are in pitch.
The way he has his Strat set up for whammy bar stuff is quite extraordinary. His playing whole melodies on harmonics which are pulled through 2 or 3 tones in perfect pitch all the time. And believe me, I've tried it. It's he makes it sound easy. He was invited to come along and play at a memorial service for Richard Wright after he died. I mean, Rick loved that track. Rick often said that he was his favourite guitar player, much to my chagrin. He came and played it live, and it was just like the record and perfect.
Just to know that piece which I wrote reached people, that was just very satisfying. And Elton told me that he and Freddie Mercury used to sit and listen to it. I went, all right. It's amazing, isn't it? That some idea ends up on a record, and then people's lives are affected some way.
Jeff's always tried to, challenge what the stereotype of guitar playing is, or the stereotype of music, or just find new ways of, expressing his take on what's happening on music right now, whether it's collaborating with different people or, finding new sounds. Or he's always got something in his mind that he wants to do and change.
He will listen to everything. I mean, he will intake anything from Ornette Coleman to the Spice Girls and anything in between, and is able to filter it into something usable.
Me and Jennifer got on quite well, doing this crazy stuff. I've always got a Beck sound system in the car, and Nadia started up. This is the most amazing thing I've ever heard. And I played it again and again on the way to the studio. And I said, listen to this. I'm going to mimic that singer. And man, it was the most difficult thing I've ever done. Those Indian singers, they twist and turn, and it's almost like beyond belief what they can do, leaping from note to note in the scales that they sing.
Indian vocals are very hard to emulate. There's such subtle nuances and little tiny bends. I actually made him loops of each little chunk of melody and looped it maybe 10 or 15 times so he could focus on just that, which I don't think he ever did before, to break it down so scientifically like that. But of course, he's gonna make it his own.
It's a perfect example of expanding the instrument beyond anybody's imagination, that it took his hands and his brain to be able to take it that far.
When I talk to other guitar players about him, there's no question. I mean, there's everybody else, and then there's Jeff Beck.
I don't even know how he's doing it half the time. He's combining the tremolo arm with bending and with volume. There's so much going on between his left hand and his right hand, and what the right hand is doing, all the independence that it has. It's all about making that voice.
Playing 5 nights at Ronnie Scott's. I think Jeff always wanted to play at Ronnie's, The fact that we pulled that off was pretty amazing because it's just a little jazz club.
Everybody's been there, Rollins. I saw Art Blakey there. I saw Elvin Jones. These people belong in there. And there's Jeff Beck up there. No. How wrong was I? Amazing.
I can't believe this. I just, you people. But on top of this, I'd like to welcome to the stage somebody who knows their way around a Stratocaster.
It was an honor, to get up with him in that venue. And the fact that he asked me to play, tremendously touching that he would want me to get up and play with him,
Mr. Eric Clapton is here tonight. I may as well fuck off only.
They were trying to figure out what to play, and Clapton said, well, why don't we play You Need Love?
Baby, you look so sweet and kind. Baby, way down inside. Woman, you need love. Woman, you need love.
We had basically all of Led Zeppelin there, all the surviving members. And it was funny playing You Need Love, because it was where they got a whole lot of love from. That was their influence for writing that song.
Jeff and I, we go back to really early teens, and let me tell you, that was a long while ago. but But we must have been about 13, 14 when we first met, and, you know, we stayed friends all the way through, and...
That was a surprise, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. To have Jimmy go up there and call me up to present me with the award, I was really flattered. And what he said really brought me to tears.
You'd sort of listen to Jeff along the way, and you'd go, wow, he's getting really, really good, Jeff, you know? And you'd hear him a few years later, and he'd just keep getting better and better and better, and he still has all the way through, and he leaves us mere mortals, believe me, you know, just wondering and having so much respect for him. And I tell you, I'm really honored to be here to induct Jeff into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because he's done so much for rock and roll, and he always will.
The plan was at soundcheck that we play Beck's Bolero.
And I thought, oh yeah, okay, I'll bring over the original guitar that I played it on, which is like a Fender 12-string, electric 12-string. And so I took it over there, and we had a rehearsal.
Somehow, I think me and Tal called up Jeff.
And I said, you know, it's really a shame that we're not playing a Zeppelin song. I mean, we're going to play with Jimmy Page.
And I got a phone call just before we were due to go. And he said, I've been having a chat with the band, and they thought it might be a good idea if we, instead of just doing Bolero, if we did Immigrant Song. And I said, oh yeah, well this is really going to be interesting, because we haven't had a rehearsal.
Right here, Jimmy Page!
The tech behind the stage apparently is like freaking out the sound guys. They're like, nobody knows what's going on. But the audience went berserk.
I mean, he was just soloing over it, and he'd throw the vocal lead in just to show, you know, just to show everybody just how on top of it he was.
I still get goosebumps when I think about that right now.
The band are having great fun doing this riff, and then we segue through into Bolero, and it's absolutely amazing.
These people that came out of that same era with the same influences, and look at the voices that emerged. Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck. And then there was Clapton and Hendrix. I mean, these guys all took that same raw material and did that. Just distinct, different branches. Every time I think of it, it's mind-numbing. And Jeff really is just totally a voice like no other.
I love his big, vast swing, you know? He'll go from something so rocking and so aggressive down to something so tender and so sweet and everything in between. And it really is a perfect mirror on all the emotions of being a human being and being alive. Just kind of covers the gamut of human emotion.
You could recognize Gilmour and Hendrix the same way you could recognize Jeff within, you know, a phrase, a note. There wouldn't be icons of guitar playing if they didn't have their stamp. And that's what I think every aspiring guitarist, including myself, wants to achieve one day. So I think they're all unique, but Jeff's is, you know, a little bit more out there.
He was doing his set, and then I had to go on after Nessun Dorma. It was like, you must be kidding, man. This is a showstopper. I can't follow that.
There's not too many musicians who can do that. That's a vocal tune for a reason.
It's really about just his sort of, you know, his two hands and a piece of wood and the things that he's able to do with it, but he does it with a lot of emotion and a lot of soul and expression.
All those years ago, you had a band that featured Rod Stewart as your vocalist. It's always seemed somewhat self-defeating to me to attempt to replace Rod with another male vocalist.
Jeff has a really cool knack for picking female singers with his choices like Imelda May, Joss Stone, and Beth Hart. There's a perfect example of 3 absolutely amazing females that go with his style and the type of energy that he wants to portray and the type of energy that he wants his band to portray at that particular time, the type of fire that he wants to have.
Some told me that it was over, baby,
I had an opportunity to go write with Jeff. We wrote a couple of beautiful songs together, and I thought that was it. And then he called me and asked me if I would be his singer. That was incredible. And I didn't get to sing a lot of songs, but I did get to sit on the side of the stage and watch him play and understand why he's the most innovative guitarist of all time.
in my soul said, go on and cry, girl.
Jeff really appreciates singers. You know, he's always listening to singers and the way that they articulate.
Beth Hart is somebody I've actually worked with before, and she's great, and she's very soulful.
As a singer, he knows what is the kind of song will best be for you. And he turned me on to that song, and I loved it.
I'd rather, baby, be a blind girl, baby, than to see you walk away from me, baby, don't leave.
Here he is, 50 years later, after his girlfriend takes him out on that stage, and he looks out and he says, God, I want to play her so bad. And 50 years later, he plays there, sold out, gorgeous, kills it. It's just wonderful.
One of my favorite records that he's done is Loud Hailer, and that's, it's incredibly modern, and having a singer like that to work off of, he's chosen well.
The revolution will be televised. You can watch it in each dream. You can talk like a weekend warrior from the Shakespeare setting.
There's a lot of pressure opening Jeff's show. This is like 50 years of Jeff Beck.
Rosie stomping around the Hollywood Bowl and all these top of the heap kind of rich guys down the front not knowing what's going on.
He always decides to do something which no one would expect him to do. Working with us, this like unknown band from Camden, Jeff's always supported young artists and especially women.
He's had a history of having really great female musicians with him. Female singers, guitar players, bass players, and not only the point of just the criteria of someone being a female, but somebody being female and very talented, and that get along great with him and his wife.
What time do you call this?
I met Jeff at Roger Taylor's birthday party. It was a funny encounter because it was like Roger said, here, come and meet Jeff. And then I turned around and realized who I was talking to, and I think the first thing I said to him was, oh, fuck, you're Jeff Beck.
I've installed the engine in your absence, so that bit's now done. I was going to get you to... Who do you like? She said, oh, Albert Collins. Ding, light went on, and I thought, that's unusual to have a female young guitarist that likes Albert Collins. So then she said, well, if you want to see me play, you know, my band, I'm playing in this pub. So we go up there, totally blown away.
He's always trying something new. The most recent album, Loud Hailer, is not like any album he's done before. He's collaborating with people who are, like himself, venturing forward into new musical territory. That'll keep you young.
The whole point is that Jeff, still at his age, is trying to pioneer things and do things differently, not just playing the same stuff that he always plays. He's pushing it a bit, getting excited about new people and making new music.
Looking back on it feels like fairyland, like it never, how the hell did that happen? Just sitting around a fireplace drinking Prosecco and writing music with a legend.
There was a lot of chatting about things that were interesting him in the world, and then after that, everything kind of came quite easily. It was done, you know, under this roof, and it was a beautiful, very natural experience. a taste of a big boy's life. I'm scared for the children.
That was Carmen's chord sequence, I think, and then I came out with the little fills and stuff. I wasn't expecting that, the depth of that song.
I love the sentiment behind Scared for the Children. Something that we all felt quite close to.
This is the end of the age of the innocent. One more game before they go.
I played the least amount of notes that actually mean something, I suppose. If there was any game plan, that would be it, really. I mean, the chords are so nice. Just sit on the chord and do it. I mean, that's what I do.
Jeff's solo on Scared for the Children, suave at first and then explodes in the second half. You know, that hint to Jimi Hendrix kind of like quote.
The best time is on a really nice sounding stage, live. You know, really pour it on.
Jeff is probably one of the most influential guitar players alive today.
And whenever I get to play with him, it's an experience that affects my drumming and my musicianship. He makes me play better.
Every time I see him, his averages are so high, but every performance is one place where he is transcendent. And I go, oh, okay, you know, I better go home and pick that guitar up again.
He's just naturally interested in making music and has enough faith in his music to know that all that stuff about the business just doesn't matter.
To have the attitude that he has where he's always ready for something new and he doesn't know it all, even though he does. I think that's magical.
There's a difference between playing music and being music. And that's how he is set apart, because he is music.
Jeff seems to embody the sound that he produces. And I've watched him take someone else's guitar, who was just playing a moment before, pick it up with no effects, no nothing, and start playing. And the sound of that same instrument is just completely different.
This is unique talent, this unique musical sensibility, vocabulary, inspiration, and willingness to take risks, jumping off cliffs, you know, and that all shows up in his music.
People do need to up their awareness about him. I mean, where have they been?
There is no one else that has been as consistently good, exciting, out there, looking for new things, adventurous, maverick, since he started in the 60s.
He just loves music. I think if you stop wanting to play, if you're not inspired by what you hear, then you might as well sit at home by the fire and watch TV. But obviously, he's still got something left to say.
I haven't given up hope, Jeff. You know, the voice, the guitar.
Well, the good thing about guitarists is that everyone's got their own character playing. You know, that's something that which we all do understand. But we could all go, we could be talking for hours and hours and years, decades and decades. But the most important thing, the thing that you can't actually put into words, is what you actually hear in that music. And that is the key to all of this, of Jeff's playing and why Jeff is so brilliant. Because it's what he manages to convey with his guitar. So, and that has to be heard to be believed.
I always keep a guitar in nearly every place in the house to remind me that I should be doing that. And the guitar is always a constant challenge. Every time I pick it up, I pretend that I've just started playing, and it seems to work.